Hi, my name is Jen Pak, or Pek Kisuk in Hangul, and I'm bicultural Korean American and bigender. And my pronouns are she and her, and I'm making this symbol to denote that the H and the E in both of those words are in parentheses to honor my masculinity within my female body. And this is my project space at Manhouse. It's in the den, which is a place of safety and sanctuary in most homes. And I brought in the symbol of the blossom by using the icon of the mountain around the space in different materials. I'm inviting the viewer to sit in a blossom that is both beautiful and dissonant at the same time, which is often true of the space of home. I'm going to talk about the danchong in this space. The danchong are the flower blossom symbols around the room and on the glass block window. They're also stenciled on the ceiling in the room. Danchong means red-green. That's the literal translation. And it's a flower symbol that is painted on the ceilings of palaces in Korea. And they're meant to be protective, both because the paint is protective against material elements like rain and pests, but also protective against evil spirits. So it was important for me to bring in this symbology in the space, partly because it relates to the symbol of the blossom that I'm creating in this space, but also because of the dissonance in this space, the need for protection amongst harm that often occurs at home. So in this icon of the mountain that I've built out of fabric, the fabric is called sekdong, which is a very traditional Korean fabric, meaning multiple stripes, and that's exactly what it is. I've run it all the way around the base of the room, and so it's the foundation of the space. And then as this icon of the mountain is articulated, it gets disengaged from itself. So there's gaps of the wall as we go up the side of the mountain. Then I've taken some script about my 할머니, my grandmother, that really talks about her being a shapeshifter through her life, having to adjust through colonization, immigration, assimilation through her lifetime. And it talks about her renaming. She was given a Japanese name because of Japanese colonization. Korean women don't take on their husband's last name when they get married, but she was given her husband's last name when she immigrated to the US because that's customary here. My white mother translated our name from Pek to Pak, P-A-C-K, to sort of anglicize the name and make it easier for white Americans to spell and pronounce. And toward the base of the mountain, I talk about how my grandmother and her family, she was born by Paektusan, which is in a village the very north end of Korea, almost to the border of China. And I say we are of the mountain because that's where my family name Pak comes from, is from Paektusan. So this was important for me to name the layers of renaming that she experienced through her lifetime and the erasures, and that she shapeshifted to survive the various forces that were enacted on her lifetime through war and immigration. So this icon of the mountain in the space is made out of wood remnants from my woodworking practice. I build the frames for my sculptural artwork out of wood. And it really, to me, was significant that I had to build around this AC unit. So there was this existing structure in the space that was really dominating. And so it took me some time to think through how I was going to integrate this and make it like fold into the space essentially. And it's interesting because what it ended up being is really referential to hierarchy and like government structures, like dominance. And that kind of dictated the text that was written on it as well, which is West cleaved north and south, East distorted its shape and forgot that it is not whole. And then on the other side, what if my grandfather hadn't stolen the babies? What alternate stories were to be? And so what this is referencing is the fact that the West, America through the Korean War, because of the Cold War, divided North and South Korea into two separate countries. And at this point, I hope to think that that's not a permanent situation, but resolving that conflict is going to be a lot of diplomatic work. And then the text on the other side about my grandfather is a reference to my white maternal grandparents' response to Korean orphans born during the war. And they went and adopted 8 children of their own and then started Holt International Adoption Agency. And I have had to really question these narratives that I grew up where they saved the orphans and really rethink about white saviorism and the way my family played a part in this international stage of what happens after war and what countries are and peoples are forced to kind of grapple with to survive in these hostile environments. And so again, going back to the pre-existing structure and having to work around it, I think that's all sort of metaphorical for this icon of the mountain in the space. Someone referenced it, a fellow artist referenced it as brutalism, meaning that there's a form of architectural style that is brutalist, and it means exposing the material for what it is. And I kind of like that as a descriptor also of the brutalism of imperialism and colonization that Korea experienced and was, transported all over Asia and different parts of the world. So in this part of the space, I'm asking people to become not just viewers, but participants by contributing their stories never to be told. In Korea, they're called Malmohasayon, and every community and family holds difficult stories, often that we don't tell to each other. And so I'm asking people to contribute them and then put them on a piece of paper and fold them into jongi jupki, which is a Korean paper folding activity, and then drop them into the slot right here. I really believe that through the practice of sharing and telling story that we can stimulate healing. And that's one thing I really intended this space to be, is a space for myself of being bicultural and integrating disparities and dissonances, both culturally and in my upbringing. And then I'm trying to extend that sentiment beyond myself to the viewer to also participate in the space. So in this icon of the mountain, it actually kind of became a tree. And it really is the piece in the room that brings in the most dissonance, where there's some violation and some confusion about what this is initially. And then you realize that it's a sort of almost like a Christmas tree in the corner, made out of dildos, toy knives, and toy guns, kind of in a gradation of very colorful elements. And this really was important for me to explore. It was a difficult exploration, but because there is abuse and neglect in my own personal history, but also because of the way colonization and imperialism in Korea and across Asia has affected Asian women and girls. So that's part of the narrative of this piece as well. And I do want to talk about the drawing of the little girl who is climbing up the tree. The text of it reads, "This is not the tree she is meant to climb." And so at the base here, she's standing with her hands in front of her vagina, and she could be at rest, but she could also be protecting herself. As she climbs up the tree, she may be having fun climbing, or she may be a little bit apprehensive about what she's, touching on this journey. Up at the top, she's standing with her arms raised, and that could be a victory symbol of I made it to the top, or hands up, you're captured. And then on the other side, she's standing on her head. And this could be playful, or it could be sort of a physical response to the absurdity of what she's, expected to climb through her life. I've also, want to note that she's drawing the shape of the mountain with her legs, and that's reflected in the shape of her vagina being inverted. It becomes the shape of a mountain. So I'm sort of fusing those two symbols and the power that they represent. So she's vulnerable but powerful at the same time. So the sliding door was a challenge materially with the paint, but what I ended up doing was taking the sekdong stripes that encompass the room and kind of mimicking them in the icon of the mountain on the sliding door. I also integrated some of the danchong symbols on the patio door as well. And really what this became was a piece that's pretty activated, which I like because it speaks to the way language works. So I have written in Korean and English, I am of the mountain, and then the mountain calls me to remember my vastness. The mountain chants in a thrumming murmur, you are royal. And then the mountains shape a blossom. And so what happens when you open the door is really fun because the languages slide into each other. So it speaks to a little bit of how language is not really an equivalency, but we do the best we can with it to articulate what we need to say. So I think of it as verbal language as well as symbolic language. I also like the sliding because the symbol that was a mountain inverts itself and then becomes a symbol of a vagina as well.